Thanks, everyone. First item of business will be to approve the agenda with additions and or deletions. Just one slight adjustment on one of the packet items. That motion. Great. Thank you, Commissioner Stoy. Any discussion on agenda? Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is a COVID-19 update.
Good morning.
Morning, Kathy.
Well, I'm going to not go through a lot of the state numbers like I have in the past because most of the numbers are really plateauing and leveling off. And that's not, even though it's important to remember that it still is moving around our communities, of course, the focus is really turned to vaccinations and getting people vaccinated. But for Koochiching County, there have been 622 positive cases and 11 deaths. We've stayed at pretty much the same numbers for a while now, so that's very encouraging. There are 606 people no longer needing isolation, and we have given 14,305 COVID tests. So it's important to keep focused on the fact, though, that it still is in our community, so we don't get too comfortable and still continue to protect ourselves. As far as the vaccinations, statewide, there is 1,072,260 people with at least one dose, and 592,134 people have completed the series, whether that be the 2-dose series or the Johnson & Johnson 1-dose. In Koochiching County, we've had 2,848 people complete at least one dose, and 1,498 people have completed the series. Just for an example, for this week, on Monday, there was 189 doses administered in Koochiching County. Yesterday, there was 54. That number is quite a bit lower, and it probably just speaks to the availability of the vaccine within our county. The focus has been on vaccinating people 65 plus, and we are currently at 66% of our 65 plus population. The goal was 70% before they move on to the next phases, which is expected to be happening this week. The governor will announce that. There is an article in the Journal from this morning that talks about the new eligibility and who will be eligible for it. 1.8 million Minnesotans will be newly eligible when this expands. So I'm not going to go into all of the people that are that will be eligible, but it's going to really open it up. You can see that in the Journal article, or it is on the prioritizing guidelines on the Minnesota Department of Health website too. But basically, it's going to open it up to just about everybody else. Essential frontline workers, Minnesotans 50 years and older in multi-generational housing, and then a lot people with high-risk conditions can also, I believe, yes, from age 45 and older with an underlying medical condition can also receive their vaccines. So we are receiving vaccine about 100 doses every other week. Essentia is receiving the Johnson & Johnson which they've been administering, and Rainy Lake continues to administer vaccines too. So we're doing really well, and it's moving quicker than they expected. It's about 3 weeks ahead of schedule now, so that's good to hear. Does anybody have any questions?
I guess it's not clear to me, what happens with children? Are they eventually going to be getting inoculated also, or what goes on there?
Yeah, they're working on that. I believe it's the Pfizer vaccine can be given to people between 16 and 18, and this new plan to open things up a bit will include Minnesotans age 16 years and older with 2 or more underlying medical conditions. So, and then they continue to work on a vaccine for the younger children. But it's not available yet.
One of the questions. Have you heard of any cases of very young children getting this?
There are cases of very young children getting COVID, you mean?
Yeah, that was my question.
Yep. There are cases of very young children. We've had some within our county. As far as I know, there is a risk to young children of it moving into Kawasaki disease, it's called. It's an immune system disease, but I don't know if anybody locally has experienced that. But we certainly have had young children with COVID, yes, as young as 9 months old.
Yeah, well, thank you for that information.
Any questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy, for the update.
Okay. Have a good day.
We'll
need to approve the minutes from the February 23rd, 2021 regular meeting.
like the meeting I was at.
Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, financial business.
Sure. We'll move on, summarized payment listing, ACH payments, oil claims, and the highway claims.
Ready?
A, B, E, and F.
Seconds. A, B, E, and F. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have to approve the
Move on that, Mr. Chair.
meeting.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have some donations. This is for the King County Veterans Transportation Program. Should from Melvin, Shannon, and the Bronco football boosters. See if Mark is here. He can speak to that a little bit. He's on the line. There he is. Yeah.
I am here.
Hi, Mark. You made it back.
Yes, I made it back. So I heard you mention my name. I was just dialing in.
Yes, we're just getting to the donations from Linda and from the Bronco football boosters.
Yeah, the Broncos last fall for the football team adopted our transportation program as their focus for their public outreach or their donation or their fundraising efforts, and they sold T-shirts. They did when they had home football games. They passed the hat around, I guess, and so when all the dust settled, they collected about $2,000 for us, and they brought the check over the other day. It was great. And then you said you had one other donation. Is that from Pete?
This is from Alton and Linda Shannon.
Right. Yep. And so Shannon's Alton Shannon and his wife had donated $1,000 to the purchase of a new van. I'd been talking about our efforts and our goal to buy a replacement van this summer, and the Shannons heard the radio show, so they donated $1,000, which was awesome.
Yes, it is. It's much appreciated. Get closer and closer to that goal.
We are, yes, definitely within sight.
Thank you, Mark, for that update.
Of course.
I'll second if I didn't already. What did you? All right. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Squid. Comments or? Yes.
I'm wondering if it's okay with the chair if you would send a note to the folks who donated, like Shannon, and give them a feeling for our appreciation.
Certainly will, and yes, it's our policy. I always respond with a thank you note whenever we receive a donation from the public or one of our corporate partners also.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Question? Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, sir.
And next up we have National B, approved grant award.
And I provided an updated list.
Have we updated this? Received 64 grant applications and requests for about 1.4 million. They reviewed all the applications. Attached to total to there was some minor changes.
I'll move on that, Mr. Chair.
Second that. Thank you, Commissioner. Favor? Aye. Aye. Getting all this week right then,
They're going to actually go in next week's weekly claims, but letters are going out to all of the applicants with the dollar amounts that they have been awarded, and then those that did not get awards will those letters will also go out. There was just a handful that either didn't meet eligibility guidelines or demonstrate a need.
This item is to review the 2020 year-end budget.
Budget to actual report. I like to do this on a quarterly basis. One of the reasons why I do it is, first of all, it gives me a way to check to make sure everything's getting posted to the right departments, the right funds. It helps me to determine, making sure that we've got all of the revenues that we have budgeted for, that we've received all of those. Then I also like to take a look at fund balances. So you can see on page 1, general revenue, and these are all expenditures for general revenue. You've got the budgeted amounts, the actual amounts, what percent of the budget, and then the variance, and then a section on notes. So the first one is COVID-19 expenses that were not covered by any CARES Act funds. Those are the expenses that we incurred probably for the month of December, when the CARES Act funds, those were all expended by the end of November. Those are eligible for FEMA reimbursement, and we will be going into for a FEMA grant reimbursement in March for those months of December, January, and February. The other big expenditure is $1.6 million. So that's the CARES Act funds that we did receive, and the revenue offsets that amount by exactly that same thing. We did spend all of those funds. And then it goes down to departments. And a lot of the departments in general are under budget. You can see the county board was under budget by $38,000. Primarily because of travel and conference. We're not having all of those per diems, and that's primarily the reason. No conferences, lots of money that the county did save on travel and meeting expenses. Courts were also down, and again, that's reflective of the courts not having bailiffs. The courts were not in session except for remotely, so we had no jury trials, so a lot less expenditures in bailiffs. Law library, that's funded revenues, fines that come in, and usually is offset. County administration was considerably under budget, and that is because we did not use all of our project contingency funds, and we had some projects that really just moved into 2021. You can see all of the other ones are really close to being in budget. Our audit service was down a little bit because we were able to use CARES Act funds to pay for some of that. They did some pre-audit work. That CARES Act is going to be on a single audit. It's greater than the threshold of any federal funds greater than $750,000 requires a single audit, and so that program will be audited with some additional expenditures for that. IT was down, of course. Some capital outlay expenditures that we had to move up due to technology needs, to have the people working remotely and teleworking, but we did use some CARES Act funds for that as well. We did have an election this year. That was a little bit over budget, but it was quite an election, and I think it went really well. We do have some HAVA funds that help to offset some of the equipment purchases that we use. Only other one that I'd like to point out on page 1 is emergency management. They were, in terms of expenditures, they were over budget, but that was because of they have some contracted services for an emergency response that they have grant funds that actually offset that. They were just unbudgeted. So there was grant funds that were offsetting that. Everything else, I think, in terms of the department on page 1, we're really in line. On page 2, there's a big one, and that's the airport project. So we only we budget for 2 different line items. We budget for operations, and that's just the operating, and then we also budget for the amount of share, our share for capital projects. And right now, obviously, you guys know that the runway project is going on. And so the city is the fiscal agent for that, and because of the large amount of cash flow that's going through on those projects, several $1 million in a month, let's say, of expenses, they wanted us to split all of those costs, actual costs, and so we set up a way to monitor that. And so we had $7.3 million of construction costs. Of that, about $1.4 million was outstanding at the end of the year. That should be a receivable from grant receipts. After they expend those funds, they can submit for reimbursement, and so we should be reimbursed. I guess theoretically, the $1.4 million is our share of the reimbursements, but I'm still waiting for the auditors and from the airport commission to get a good number on what's actually receivables, because some of those may not be actually eligible for reimbursement. So that's sort of a pending number that is something that we really need to get a solid number on that for our financial statement, because you can see the 1.3 million is actually, or almost 1.4 million, came out of the general revenue fund. So those funds are no longer in general revenue; they were actual expenditures. So, and then if you look sort of a third of the way down, the total expenditures budgeted were only, I shouldn't say only, $9.2 million, but we actually had expenditures of about $17 million. The difference from budget to actual is about $8.2 million, and it's the CARES Act funds and the airport expenditures that really made up that difference. So I like to look at that number, why are we off, what's the difference, and I was able to identify those numbers. Now we're going to look at some revenues. You can see that property taxes were actually down a little bit, although I think that in general that's about the collection rate that we get. There were some additional revenues that offset that. Did receive additional revenues. We talked about this last year. It's called Power and Light, and it's actually the Great Northern Transmission Line. All of those electrical utility companies, those revenues came in a little bit higher than budgeted. We had the unbudgeted revenues of the CARES Act funds. Everything else came in pretty much in line, except I just want to point out right in the middle of that page, that police para relief fund. We did not receive those funds, and will not be receiving those funds. That statute actually expired, and we're no longer going to be able to receive those funds. So that was a $27,000 of revenue that we did not receive in 2020, and we're not going to receive it in 2021, even though it was budgeted. So we'll have to watch that in the 21 budget. Con revenue from the that revenue. Con money that comes in is what's harvested off of those lands, and those were down a little bit. We never really know what is really happening in those lands. This might be from the DNR and some other entities that might either mine or cut some timber on there. So those were down a little bit this year compared to where I had budgeted. I made an adjustment in the 2021 budget. Our interest was down a little bit from what was budgeted, $350,000. We had interest on investments of about $250,000. So that number was again adjusted in 2021. One item that I am waiting for is this it was actually about 2 or 3 years ago, we did a channel change on our towers for over-the-air TV. The FCC was supposed to reimburse us on a grant, and so I'm expecting about $80,000 yet. We have not received that revenue, although I have received notification from the FAA or FCC, that they've got all the documentation. It's sort of in a holding zone right now, and I worked with Lee Hervey on that, and he's really great. He completed all of the grant requests and did all of the follow-up, and so I usually will touch base with him to get a status of that, but that should be coming around, I would think, in the next couple months.
That would be from the Miniano Towers, right?
I don't know what the name is of them, but we have over-the-air TV on several towers, and there was a big channel change because the cell,
Digital.
no, that was already done
Okay.
a few years ago. This was a different thing. The T-Mobile bought a certain range of cell numbers, I guess, and so they had to like lower their whatever number they were on, and it was a big project. But Lee took care of all of that for us.
The tires were in trouble.
Yes, I was thinking that same thing.
We should be lucky, you know. Sit down with him, see what these things are.
That's a good
He
idea.
is one person show, and he's the only one that knows all that stuff. Sorry, Mr. Chair, just thought I'd throw that in.
Overall, in the middle of page 3, you can see the fund balance. General revenue had a cash loss of $807,000. We used that of reserves. Like I said, that 1.3 million in receivables from the airport, that's going to have a significant impact on our general revenue. But in February, I think we received about $1 million back. And most of the construction projects, there's not a lot, no expenditures going out in the next few months. So we'll be able to catch up. Although next summer, the situation will be exactly the same, where there's a lot of money going out, and it takes a while to receive those revenues back in.
Do we get an update when like the receivables are done and so forth to get a better picture of where we were at the end of 2020, or do we just keep that in the back of your mind?
I don't know if I understand your question from the airport specifically or
Just
from
in general,
general.
got it. When they do the audit, that kind of gives us a better picture of where we're at the end of 2020 when they actually do the audit in 2020, because all the receivables.
It does. Although we're using actually a modified accrual right now, so for general revenue, I have a really good idea of what our balance is because we're using an accrual basis, and so I can actually get a good balance of what our general revenue fund is in modified accrual at the end of the year before for budget purposes next year. So I don't have to usually wait until August.
Good.
Now that's just for general revenue. Highway, that's not true because that's quite a bit more complicated with relationship with MnDOT, receivables, and how all of those works. And for public health and human services too, that they don't have typically a lot. I think most of them are cash paid, but I don't have as good a handle on that.
Okay.
As I do now.
Thank you.
I think for the other departments, I'm really just going to talk about some fund balance changes. On page 4, for highway, they had budgeted to use reserves, a fund balance of about $600,000. They came in a little bit under at $450,000 of reserve use. 2021, they have budgeted to gain some. That, like I said, highways a complicated budget, and I think this spring, before we start the budget process, I'd like to sit down with highway and the board and the committee of the whole and really talk about what that looks like for the next few years. And Dave seems to have a really good handle on that. He's working with Trent and what maybe some of those longer term needs are going to be for highway.
Is our operating balance pretty stable right now in regards to what it should be?
Yes, over the last couple of years, they've been using a lot of reserves, though.
Yeah.
So that their fund balance was boosted up by the turnback funds and also the Great Northern Transmission Line funds that the highway received for the roads. But it is getting to the point where it's something that really needs to be watched because
I agree.
we don't want it to get too low.
I agree.
Public Health and Human Services had budgeted for pretty much a break even. They actually had revenues. They have a gain in their fund balance of about $275,000. That's a good thing because their fund balance has always been really under the ideal amount, getting closer to getting that up to the amount that is more reasonable. So that's going to be kind of an ongoing thing. We've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 years since I've been here, and that fund balance has been growing. Environmental services on page 5, kind of in the middle of the page, they had budgeted to use almost $750,000 of fund reserves, and they used I shouldn't say only, but they only used $185,000. So there were some projects that got delayed and will be moved into this year's budget. Out of their fund balance, though, they do have about $300 of restricted funds that are included in that, and those are restricted for AIS, aquatic invasive species, and some buffer funds. This is we have a small fund for West Koochiching. We also call that paper makers. That is also an interest-bearing fund, and so they get a little bit of interest on their balance. Their balance is about $74,000. We have con funds, and that is on top of page 6. Con did use some reserve funds this year, but they do have a significant amount of dollars. They still have about almost $500,000 in their fund balance. They're also budgeted to use a little bit of reserve this year with an economic development project that they're working on there in Birchdale with some expansion of their community center for business purposes. Here's our economic development fund. That's our KDA. Like I said, last year we ended up with have a fund balance as of December 31st of about $303,000. And we used a little bit of reserves last year. But capital expenditure fund is the Island View Sewer Project. We actually have 2 capital expenditure funds. That's the Island View Sewer and now the Northland Counseling Grant, or that's their GEO bonds that we were awarded. Work with Northland Counseling on the new facility. We've had some legal fees that were incurred, but we don't have all the grant documents in place, but we're working towards that. But the Island View Sewer at the end of the year was about $1.2 million. If you remember, actually it was about $1.2 million. It was a temporary loan, and so we took money from general revenue. We did a temporary loan into the Island View Sewer Project because we can't have a negative fund balance by the guidelines that the auditor set. So as we really need to they want us to physically make that transfer from one fund to the other. So both of those transfers were done, and at year end, the $1.1 million into the sewer project and about $14,000 for Northland Counseling. We have a couple debt service funds. We've got one for Jackfish, and we have one for Islands and Sewer Project. Our debt service fund for Jackfish was a negative. We're actually paying out some bond payments before the revenues are actually received. So there's just a timing issue there. But as that fund balance decreases every year, that happens. I'm not sure when exactly the date is that debt service was supposed to extend. I think we might have, or was to expire, but we might have to extend that a year just to finish paying off the final debt payments. But it's going to be very close. I'm thinking we're short just maybe like 25,000 after now we receive all the payments, services. On page 8, it talks about there's the Island View Debt Service Fund. We've got a pretty nice balance that's growing in the debt service fund for the Island View Sewer Project, and that's needed because we do make payments at the beginning of the year. So we had $370,000 to rent those payments that are coming in, or the interest payments that are due. So I'm not going to really talk about lands and forestry. That is really a zero budget amount because all of the expenses for lands and forestry will come out of the trust fund apportionment before it's apportioned. So overall, we had on page 9 of 9, we had budgeted for expenditures of $29,000. We had expenditures of $36,000. Revenue was budgeted for about $26.7 million. We had revenues of $35.1, and all of those differences can really be attributed to the airport and the CARES Act funds. We had budgeted to use $2.4 million in reserves. We used $1 million of reserves. So it's better. I mean, $2.4 million seems like a lot of funds that we're using in reserves, but you have to remember that some of those funds that we're using are grant funds and some other things that were restricted just for those purposes. I also gave you a kind of a final summary on page 9 of all of the fund balances and where our estimated fund balances are going to be in 2021. And I think we're going to talk about this quite a bit in budget discussions. The concern I have is with environmental services. They have been seen a lot of capital equipment and trying to sort of catch up. But if they're going to continue to do that, we're going to have to find a revenue source because their fund balance is going to be below where the optimal level, where it needs to be to support that department. And we just had a couple budget changes. I always tie this out at the end. It's for our auditors. They need to, any budget changes have to be approved by the board. It's just a way that, these budget changes matches it's a way that tie the original budget to the final budget. And I do have a couple of graphs. One is out-of-home placement costs. You can see that 2017, they gradually went down, and in 2020, they started to go up a little bit. So I've been talking to Kathy about this and Bobby, and they have a pretty good handle on that. There were some more out-of-home placements than they had anticipated, but yet they were still able to come in under budget overall for their department. But it's something that we're going to want to watch it pretty closely because we get a couple placements that are super expensive that can go, you can spend up to $10,000 per child a month if they're in, depending on what kind of facility that they're in. The last graph that I gave you, I actually replaced that with the average number of children served instead of just the total. I think I gave you that handout. The average number, it's a little bit better way to look at where the trend is. So in 2019, we had an average monthly amount of 26 placements, 6 children that year. It is bumped up to 40 children. So obviously there's a direct relationship between the number of kids served and placements. Yes.
The numbers of out-of-home placements this past year, was any of that, and it's probably hard to tell if any of it was COVID related?
No, that's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kathy is still on. Probably not, but
I guess it's probably difficult to tell whether it was or not, but I
It
mean,
is.
some of it could be, but
I think maybe work towards the stress of the stressful situations that some families were in due to COVID creates more maybe dysfunction and needs. Yeah, so.
That would be normally lower cost placements, but it definitely affects the numbers, I'm sure.
yeah.
One of the things on these graphs is that maybe that's something I can go ask them for is auto placements. Definitely the children served is a correlation to the cost, but there's also a graph which is, maybe I can help Bobby find, but it breaks out what facilities the kids are on in the same type of format.
Okay.
And the revenues, because there are going to be times when numbers are about the same and the costs are going to go skyrocket. It's going to be because 4 or 5 in the Rule 5 placement and how our reimbursement works. And reimbursement seems to fluctuate by the state. So maybe I'll talk to them and see if I can find that old graph that I used to develop for them.
Yeah, that would be really good if we could tie the number, what's being reimbursed as
where the revenues come from, exactly, yeah. Is that all right if I go do it?
That would be great.
All right.
Share that with me. And Bobby sends me a sheet, and I've got a lot more detailed data, like what types of placements these are, and there's a lot more, but this is really just a summary.
See if we can dig and find
If you like, I'll go with you if you want. Or, it's good for me because the Health and Human Services is my policy thing that I work with AMC. Okay. So, but maybe I'll learn something after 20 years. So.
That he's dedicated to learning something. Yeah.
But like she said too, though, it's a lot of the expenses, is related to where they go.
Yeah.
If they go, to Anoka or wherever, it's increases can increase dramatically.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we way should we approve that?
John, you may be on for this.
Anyone speak to this?
Janelle's actually off today. She has an appointment, so this is our jail administrator, so I can John. Or yeah, we don't have to. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Hey, John, thank you.
We're debating on Pete, whether we should make him work a little longer, John.
We might have to put him on a retainer just to for all of his knowledge.
Anyway, you'll need a motion then, Mr. Chair. I'll move.
Luke,
Second.
Pete? Any comments on this?
I mean, Pete's been there a long time. He's done a good job.
Comments, so I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next up is to approve the employment separation of the Untitled Chapter.
And everyone, we received notification from the heavy equipment operator down in Silverdale that he was resigning effective this Friday. He's been in the position approximately a year. went through the process back in 2019 of addressing the need for this position down in Silverdale. It was quite a lengthy process. So what we're doing is we're seeking authorization to post for this position as well.
Motion to approve it. So I'll make a motion to authorize to fill the vacancy.
Good for discussion. So I mean, you feel there's still no way to have someone there on a basis, right?
Yeah, from the numbers that we put together back in 2019, it just isn't it's not profitable for us to do that.
So, well, Terry, were we able to utilize him in other areas when we needed?
We did.
Okay.
We did. A lot of Terry's time was spent getting to know the area, addressing roads, because when Dan was in place, we took Dan and we moved him around quite a bit to other areas, just for construction purposes. With Terry, we wanted to familiarize him with the area, with the equipment, and everything. Stick around home a little bit more than like say Danny did.
Right on a back. That's always been the issue down there. Is it 21 miles, I think?
Low 20s, yeah.
For a full-time position, 21 miles is as long as we can utilize them in other areas. That's what you're looking at. Thank you.
Oh, we'll re-advertise down around that Cook War area. We have the open position for heavy equipment operator up in International Falls. However, an applicant for the International Falls HEO position isn't necessarily interested in heavy equipment operator down in Silverdale, and vice versa. There might be some candidates that aren't interested, candidates from down in that southern region that aren't interested in an International Falls position. Yeah.
Until you get down to Silverdale.
You're actually lucky if you leave alive when you look on Silverdale.
I always had Carol, they loved her, so I enjoyed it down there.
There's nothing else, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Should mention that Terry did a really nice job down there. Sad to see him leave.
Is he taking another position somewhere then?
Yes. He's working in the mines.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then the next one is, Mr. Chair, is just the notice of temp hire.
Okay.
And I guess Dale Olson is going to bless us with his presence again here. So I haven't seen him for a few years, so I was pleased to see this come through.
Next up is to consider changing the March 23rd board meeting time to 3 p.m. to accommodate human flood information starting at 5 p.m.
Sense to me, I'll move, Mr. Chair.
March 23rd. All those in favor? Aye. Seven is to do a public hearing. Second Amendment, dedicated county petition.
About a year ago.
It's like over 1,000 signatures and are still continuing. Really didn't get an answer for that. Have a bit of a public hearing there for specifically been a public comment time. And didn't really have any resolution made, passed, or accepted. We are willing to pass or accept any resolution made by this board. So I guess that would be part of the discussion, and it's open for discussion. And I see we may have a couple of guests as well. Area, so they certainly speak to that if they're available.
Are we looking at whether we should have one or a date? I think we should definitely have one.
That would be the consideration, I think.
After being here a long time, we have always still have to have a public hearing. That event took place in January. A lot of people are gone. So anytime there's an issue where there's going to be people on both sides, we've held a public hearing, and we've done it, from May to October. Those are the months we reserve those for. And that way, everyone can be, snowbirds especially. So that was the thinking there. Of course, this got delayed by the virus, no question about that. But myself, I think the next step, if the board is willing, is to set a public hearing date on the issue. And I would think in May would be fine. They've had to wait a long time. This has been over a year now. So that's just my thought. So,
That's a good one. May.
Mr. Chair, we have a board meeting on May 11th and May 25th.
Do we want to do it earlier in the May, or do we want to do it in the end?
I think any time in May would be fine.
Snowbird be back on the 11th.
I think so. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Should we convene it after the site?
We're all here then.
We'll set a public hearing for, depending on business, sometime after 10:30 on the 11th.
We have people from the public downstairs that would like to speak,
Yes.
but we can't hear you completely.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry.
are they welcome to start speaking now?
Yeah, we're actually, we're trying to find a date and a time for the public hearing, set a time in May. So that's kind of what we're looking at, but they're certainly willing, or certainly available if they, can you hear us? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Make sure they don't speak out of turn. So I will go down and unmute them.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. It's hard doing this remote stuff.
Maybe we can have a larger room, maybe.
Well, that would, is going to have to be a consideration.
Yeah.
We're going to have the spacing and stuff according to people. Last time we had, 50, 60 people. Third floor courtroom, we have to designate some type of seating arrangement and capacities and things like that if this is still.
I would just add too, I was thinking about that, and I think another possibility would be the auditorium there at Bacchus. We've helped them an awful lot, and I know they maybe let us utilize that, because then you could really space it out.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I guess it depends on how many people are. But my feeling is there'll be quite a few people. So
I'd like to definitely take the necessary precaution to keep it safe as we can.
guys down here?
You just have to state their names. I don't.
Say, Joe, would you want to let everybody know who you are?
You're asking, okay, my name is Joe Butera. We're having a really hard time hearing you guys down here, that's all. We're here to try to advance, and I think that we heard you were looking for a day for a meeting for a public hearing?
That is correct.
Okay, because basically, that's what we're here for. If you can ensure us we have a day to be heard, we can bring all of our public comments there, if that's suitable for you guys.
Well, we're concerned about the capacity and stuff, so we're kind of thinking about maybe holding it at Bacchus, perhaps, and that would give everybody the spacing in the room that we need to, then you can have quite a few people there, you know what I mean? So
Sure. That works for us.
You can be in person and stuff there, and we'll still have, I think, adequate room to do that safely. So we'll probably think we'll maybe have it after the board meeting on the 11th of May, and that our board meeting will be at 9:30, but that'll probably go till probably 11. So we could schedule something for, like, say 11:30, something like that. If that's, try to keep the business light on the 11th there. So.
Okay, and that will be at Bacchus for sure. Do we need to wait to hear from you guys for a definite?
Well, I'll tell you, Joe, if we can get your contact information, probably Jenny will let you know if that's available and what's going to happen there. I think we're pretty confident that we can meet there, but we just want to make sure they don't have something like that too. So.
Okay, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. You need my contact information? That's fine with me. You want phone number, email address, whatever works best for you guys.
Yeah, well, we'll just let you know, then you can pass it along to who need, to your group and stuff. So.
Okay, that's perfect. So I'll just fill in my contact information for you. Okay, guys, if you don't want any public comments now, we're good to go. If you can let us know when that date is, we'll be there. I'll make sure that this lady has my contact information and plenty of other contact information as well. So the sooner you could let us know when it's written in stone, I'm sure the better off we'll be. We realize that there's an agenda, and we'll be prepared to wait our turn.
Yeah, we'll conclude the meeting. You'll be part of the board meeting, and you'll be the last item on that agenda of the board items. So that'll give you all the time that you need. So there'll be nothing after your presentation and stuff. So
thank you for that. Anything else you guys want to add at all?
That's great.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you hanging out and coming too. Sorry about the wait.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Anybody have any?
I think this would be all right, but I don't know how it works for these folks. But historically, when we've had public meetings and hearings, we've usually done them in the evening because a lot of people are working. Now, I don't know if that would be an issue here or not. I'm just putting that out there.
Would we be open to an evening meeting?
Yeah, as long as we have enough time to prepare, I don't think that any time will be out of the question.
Evening might be better for.
Evening might be better for us as well, sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Commissioner Pavlik mentioned it might be a better idea. You may, get some people that are working during the day and stuff too. So. Would that be possible that we can look into? Like I say, it would be.
What time would you like it to start?
6 o'clock usually is what we did. I mean, that's up to you guys.
6 p.m. Open to that. So 6 p.m. is would that be a decent time?
I think so.
I think that would be ideal. You're just going to need more chairs then.
That's why we usually hold them in the evening, because everybody can come.
Yeah, we'll tentatively then, barring unavailability or something, we'll plan for May 11th at 6 p.m. We'll firm that up with Joe and when we find out for sure too. So
Perfect.
Yep, works for us, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. About that, then maybe we're on the agenda for the next meeting if it's possible.
I think you can make a motion right now. I can get it scheduled. If it comes back, I'll bring it back. If there's a conflict.
I'll accept a motion for public meeting for this Second Amendment dedicated county petition for May 11th at 6 p.m.
That motion.
Great. Second. Comments or concerns?
Yeah, once we get, if I could, Mr. Chair, once we get confirmation on the availability of that facility, then we can get the word out through the board or something.
Good. Sounds great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And motion carries. Next up is item 8 is to adopt a resolution supporting the reconstruction of runway 1331. Phase 3 project at the Falls International Airport.
Keep this one or I'm gonna be in trouble.
Thank you, Commissioner Godlick.
Second that.
Great. Comments or concerns?
This, Mr. Chair, is a huge construction year this year out there, and this is the main runway. Getting more to the end of it, but at the end of this year, we pretty much pay our airports. Hopefully, we can start getting our traffic back and across the nation. It's slowly rising. So, okay, honey, thank you.
Comments or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Item 9 is to authorize the Kita to submit a joint grant application. We could have a meeting on that. Jen can maybe explain a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I don't know if Paul's on the meeting or not, but there's a grant that Paul Levitin is looking at. It's a joint grant. City of the county. It's through the USDA for a community facilities technical assistance grant. It's a very competitive grant. It's nationwide. He's actually working with the USDA representative in Bemidji to make sure that our score is the best as possible. Obviously, when you have two government entities that work together and collaborate, there's additional, you get additional scoring on that. Paul is asking that the county board go ahead and prove that he submits that application with a extra 10% potential contribution from the county. He will do the same thing, prove the submission of the grant application with a 10% contribution, have a total of 20% contribution, and that will score the maximum points that are allowable in that category. So I do not anticipate that this will come into budget until 2022. But there are some joint projects that I'm looking at, and this will provide some technical assistance in order to. I don't know if Paul's on or not, Evident. Paul Evident on by any chance? Okay, I thought he was going to be on. Over to Ted broke up. City Hall.
Doesn't hurt to ask, try it.
Well, it's I think that
That motion, Wade?
Yep.
Second.
Troy. The maximum awardation is 150,000, right?
That's correct.
That's definitely some concerns. Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. This time, we will be under closed session, and I will accept
I need to vote on that, Mr. Chair.
oh, excuse me, sorry. All those in favor of reopening, by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'll get open.
Next is to consider the approval of settlement from case number 36CV19191 of appraisal of assessor's offer of $559,000 to Bison LLC.
We need it open.
Close my eyes. I repeat that? We're looking for a motion to approve the assessor's offer of $559,000 from case number 36CV19191. Mason LLC.
Move, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up will be sheriff's business. Accept bid for 2 new squads. Hi. Hi, John.
Hello. Yeah, so we've got, I had the state bid, and as you can see there, Worley's came in quite a bit higher. You know, in years past, they've been pretty close. I just don't know why it was such a low trade-in value this year, but, you know, and I like to shop local as well, but when we're talking, you know, $9,000 difference, and the fact that I will not be able to stay within the budget of the capital outlay if we were to accept the local bid.
I'm willing to move on that, Mr. Chair, as long as they're not electric cars.
What motion would you accept?
You're looking to award the bid, right?
Yeah, my recommendation would be to award the bid to Dodge of Burnsville, because they were $9,000 lower.
Little bit.
Thank you, Commissioner Pavlik. Thank you, Commissioner Beatty. Thank you. Any comments or concerns?
I say that about electric, jokingly, but there's the big push in the current administration to have all electric vehicles in a short amount of time. I mean, right now an electric vehicle, they're not all that cheap. Like 80,000. Wonder where we're going there. Just couldn't see a sheriff's squad vehicle being electric.
Hey, let's sneak up on them easier.
Yeah, it'd be a lot quieter. That's
Be a lot quieter, but you have to run with a light on, they don't go half as far.
Any other questions or comments for John? No, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have land forests. Looking for money request for the Reschedule Community Building Addition. and to award that bid.
Yep. Good morning again. This first item number 1 is something that Jenny touched on briefly in her budget overview. I was hoping somebody from the RVDA would be here on the call today, but basically the River Valley Development Association, it's a community group over in Birchdale, area. They are looking to get permission to use CONCON funds to put a 20 by 20 addition on the existing Birchdale community building. They put an RFP out. Soren Olson is the chair of the RVDA. He handed out a number of these packets to contractors, and they only received 2 responses. So you can see in the RBA the summary of the bids that they received. They received 2 bids, one from Myers Glass for $59,500, and the other one from Tony Zook Construction for $44,915. But the one caveat in there, I do see Ralph Lewis is down there too, so he may be able to speak to this too. The one caveat with the low bid is the low bidder did indicate in their proposal that due to building materials just kind of they're skyrocketing and they're changing basically by the week. It seems like that if materials increase more than 5%, they reserve the right to change their bid. So I don't know how the board would want to proceed with that if if we were to cap the funding at this amount, and then anything above and beyond that would come back to the board for a change order request consideration or not. I don't know, Ralph, if you want to speak to any of this.
Yeah, they agree with that part. All that. We've had inquiries for space, so that's why we're looking to put an addition on.
There was some talk of being able to perhaps rent that space out to someone who might need it. Or some.
Yeah, right. That would.
Yes, that was part of it because they actually lost one of their someone that would want to rent it to start a business, and they ended up losing it because there was no place to go. So that's what Soren was talking about at the meeting last night. Like I said, Ralph was there, and so I think Ralph will agree with that. Is that correct, Ralph?
Right.
Question of the board.
I'll move on up. We move out that.
Yeah. Consider the funding request for the first half community building addition to Tony Zook for $44,950.
Yes, I'll wait till there's a second.
Second for discussion, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I think what I'd like to see is for you to make that motion for the $44,915 plus the 5%, because it is still under that second bid, and then anything more than that would have to come back through change orders, just because that would, eliminate a little bit of it. It's because he did say in the bid that it could go up to 5%, so I would say up to that amount, and that amount would be. It'd be $47,160, up to $47,160 with no change orders.
I'm happy with that.
It doesn't, it says if it's up to 5%, it's over 5%, that he's not asking for 5% more, he's saying he wants to rebid it if it's over 5%. So if it's 10%, he would probably ask 10%, is that right?
I think
You're wrong thinking that.
But I think the way Nathan was saying is that we would go with that, and then they would have to come back to the board for any more than that.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yes. maintenance and that would all be, that would be coming out of the Concom funds.
Yeah, and I should note that this is budgeted. We did budget for this in the 2021 Concon budget. And you can see, you know, the county development fund, or we call it the Concon fund. You can see what you know, the policy or the background on how those funds can be expended there on the RBA sheet.
Mr. Chair, you know, I want to appreciate the group and that put this together, because they're adding on to the good existing building instead of trying to, it would be very difficult, I would think, to have a completely separate building with utilities and everything else. And so they're keeping this cost at the absolute lowest, and still it will function to allow a business or someone to operate, you know.
It is also closed enough that business next door can operate without having to access into the building.
It's needed down there. I mean, I felt really bad. Former Commissioner Hansen called me and told me about the one they had lost. Comments? And Terry, you may not, I don't know if you're totally familiar, but those funds can only be spent in that area right there. We have the final say, but you know, we do road projects, all kinds of things with it. Anything else? I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. Next up is to reschedule the timber auction.
Yep. So you'll recall back in January, I came to the board to postpone our scheduled February 3rd timber auction to a date sometime in April, in hopes that, you know, maybe there's a slight chance we could move it outside like we have with previous auctions, and also considering that hopefully by then more folks that attend those auctions would have had a chance to get the vaccine. So we are looking for approval to approve a new date of April 7th at 10 a.m. in Big Falls for that timber auction.
I'd be willing to move if he'll wear a mask. I don't want him getting sick. Gotta keep Nathan healthy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Skoye.
Wait, is it second?
Yes. Any other questions or comments for Commissioner Ady?
Nathan, just a quick point here on the agenda and that here. It says April 17th.
Yeah, there was a corrected agenda. That was a typo. There's a corrected agenda that was sent out. Yep.
Yep. Jen probably had that here, and I handed it to Carol when I got here. So, but sorry about that.
No problem.
Just wanted to make sure you didn't have us coming down there on a Saturday.
Yeah, right.
Sure. Call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Highway phrase it sequence for goal. Okay.
Yep. So the highway department has authorized highway department to seek quotes for underground fuel storage and above ground basement. As everyone might remember, we had 4 underground storage tanks. What we thought was 4 underground storage tanks at the Birchdale location, the Loman location, the Little Fork location, and the Mizpah location. We received approval a couple of years ago to remove the ones at the Loman location and the Little Fork location, and the Birchdale location. We ended up finding an additional at the Birchdale location too. So the remaining two are at Little Fork and Mizpah. The Little Fork one will be replaced with an above ground storage tank. The Mizpah location will not be replaced. We will start using the service station. So we would like to be able to advertise for quotes for that project. We're estimating it at approximately $20 million.
Gonna have to be removed and someone's gonna get more expensive this time.
Yeah, the stipulations that the MPCA puts on us, or the requirements that the MPCA puts on us, are say getting a little bit ridiculous.
Second? There's no second. Second, Mr. Chair. If I could, the Gateway Trading Post comes to mind. The county got stuck with that one. We thought there was only two, and there was stuff all over it, and it had contaminated the ground. You know, it had come back to the county taxpayers here, so they're responsible. So, I mean, Grendel had to get a crew out there. We spent a ton of money cleaning that one. So it is good to get. It is good to. That's just the way it is nowadays. They gotta come out. The wave of the future. But after going through all that, I can see why they want them above ground now. So if there's a leak, you know it right away. We're underground. It can go forever. What a mess.
Yes. Is there grants in that through MPCA or someone else that can or will help with removal of those now?
Not necessarily removal, but if there is a spill, we do qualify for 90% reimbursement for cleanup for the petrol fund. But as far as removing the tanks, we don't get reimbursed for that.
Just for the cleanup.
Just for the cleanup.
Thanks.
You gotta haul contaminated soil somewhere and get it in a deal. I mean, it's expensive, and it takes years for that to clean out. We can avoid it if we want to do that. First by Commissioner Stoy and a second by Commissioner Pavlik. On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is for the nuisance beavers.
Yep. So on a yearly basis, we go out for quotes for tire trucks, propane delivery, and nuisance beaver. Tire trucks would be, you know, if we have a large project where we're hauling long travel out to a specific location, call on these folks to help us out. Propane delivery, of course, is servicing our nuisance beaver, of course. About that.
I thought you might have nuisance commissioners in there too.
Nuisance commissioners.
Are you able to, have you got bidders on the beavers or not?
What's that?
You have bidders on the beavers or?
Well, this is just requesting to see.
Okay, what do you mean you're not having trouble getting bidders on it, though?
We haven't yet. I think it helps that, you know, we open it up a little bit more where we have issues during season. We'll contract with the contracted trappers. So in previous years, we just notified them during season. Or the beaver if we wouldn't reimburse them for it. But during season.
Which didn't make much sense, because if the season was closed, you'd get $50 a beaver, but it was open, you trapped it, you only got $5. So.
That's correct.
Need a motion, Mr. Chair?
I'll second on that one.
Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Have this vaccine.
Okay, this one should actually say advertise for bids for CPE 2021-01 CASA 5 and CASA 32 crack seal master repair. So this is kind of a cleanup of what we had left over on those two roads. We addressed better part of CASA 32, the Black River Road, in 2019. And then we addressed the better part of CASA 5 in 2020. So this would just be a continuation of those two projects to finish up the road. Engineer's estimate puts it at, what was it? It's a little bit over 300,000. It's 310,000. We anticipate that we'll get a lot better bids than that. Typically, our crack sealing projects or pavement conditioning projects, they're bid quite competitively and come in substantially under engineer's estimates. We'd like to get authorization to go for bid for that.
A bid for motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray.
Second.
Second.
Did Kevin do it or me?
Kevin is the second this time.
Okay.
Other. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Yeah, so this is a yearly project that we have as well. Typically break the county up into 4 quadrants and address 1 quadrant each year. 5th year, we circle back to. This particular year will be focused more on the west side of Highway 71. So Birchdale down through Mizpah. Typically spend, in that $60,000 a year, give or take. This particular engineer's estimate comes in at $65,075. I'd expect we negotiate some cost on that too. It seems like they're quite competitive as well. So we would like authorization to pull as well.
Move.
Second. What else does that cover?
Since 90 miles? What was the thing? I'll say that in the past we've used latex. That's what we're going to use this year as well. I think it would be beneficial to go to epoxy paint at some point. It's a lot more expensive, but it holds to the road a lot better. And as we see a transition in vehicles, lead definitions are going to become very important. Yeah. So, better quality paint, we need. Sure.
Big electric car tools work better.
Yep.
Electric scooter.
Yes, Commissioner Edie.
That was covered by state aid dollars, right?
This is 100% state aid dollars.
100% state aid, okay.
Yeah, we typically only focus on the CASA roads for the, unless there's an absolute need on it.
Okay.
I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for hanging out.
Hey, Matt.
Hello. I was had something going on in the office here a little earlier when you were talking about the change of the county board meeting to 3 p.m. on March 23rd, change of time. I missed that. Did you guys decide to change it to 3 p.m.? We have that flood map informational virtual meeting or open house on the 23rd from 5 to 7. So if you wanted to attend, it made sense.
Yep, it is changed to 3.
Okay, great. So the first item on the agenda under environmental services is the Minnesota Geological Survey County Geological Atlas Agreement. As a follow-up to the presentation on the Geological Atlas program at the last county board meeting, now I'm requesting approval to enter into an agreement with them for the purpose of creating a geological atlas of the county. As it was stated at the presentation, the program produces maps and databases that describe the geology and water and mineral resources of the county and forms useful for land use planning and resource management. There is a required in-kind contribution, which would be to locate approximately 1,000 wells throughout the county over the next year or two. The Minnesota Geological Survey expects delivery of the geological mapping data to the county in about 4 years from the date they begin their work, estimated to be 2026. And I reviewed this with the county attorney, and I recommend entering into this agreement.
Mr. Chairman, that takes the risk on this one. Second. They might have you out there hitting rocks or something. Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot more coming in wells and stuff. That's for sure.
Well, I think that's a great project, man. If we have the time to get out there and find some of these things that are, I guess that's the only thought is we have to spend a lot of time looking for stuff, but I think they say they can go by some of the records too.
I'm sorry, Jason, I couldn't hear you.
But I just was saying it's a good project and stuff. I was just a little hesitant with some of the staff time that maybe having to go look for some of the well heads and things like that. And then how much information can we get out of the existing records that we have?
Yeah, so locating the wells will take some time, but I've talked it. I've thought about how we do that, and we do have some time within our office that maybe we could allocate, but also we have a soil and water conservation district that we provide $15,000 per year for. It's water, implementing our water plan. And so this would fit right in with that. And so we contract with them, and we could probably partner with, have them complete the work if we needed them to do it. And I have a couple other ideas also, but I believe we can get the work done that's necessary. And I do believe that this would be valuable to the county in the long term. So.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, I apologize for that. I was going to try something, but it didn't work. Well, thank you, Matt. Anybody have any questions for Matt? If not, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And Jason, I'll have to get your signature onto the agreement. So I'll come down here after the meeting. The next item is approve amendment number 7 for professional services between the county and SEH to provide additional Island View Sewer Project engineering consultation services. It's based on an hourly basis as necessary to finalize the contracts. The county attorney and I both recommend approval of this amendment.
I'll move. Thank you, Commissioner Yates. Second. Commissioner Murray. Just a small continuation.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Just a small continuation of services.
Yeah, it's a continuation of services as necessary until we finish this, finalize these projects, so.
Questions on the hearing? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one, similar, it's on the Island View Sewer Project. Authorize us to engage Environmental Financial Group, Inc., which is Scott Harder, on an hourly basis for professional consultation services to analyze the financial data and provide assessments in support of the Island View Sanitary Sewer Project. So Scott Harder assisted us with assessment and financial planning in the early parts of the Island View Sewer Project. He also was a consultant for us on the Jackfish Bay Sewer Project. And we want to engage him to help us with that information regarding future connection charges, adjustment to debt service charges, and additional finance assistance, which will help us close out the projects. And I would recommend moving forward with this professional service.
Or
that motion.
all right. Second. Shady. Questions or concerns?
Sure, a large range of professional services in the senior. Oops, sorry, I know this. Off their scale, or it's gonna. I guess that's kind of normal for engineering, though. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Wade, what did you say?
We were just looking at, I see on the senior engineering sheet for billable hours or billable rates, there's a huge range, like 140 to 240 for a project manager, for example, 135 to 220 specialists, things like that. I guess that's pretty normal, isn't it?
It is, but yeah, it is a lot. It's a lot of hourly. The rates are one. At that rate.
Yeah.
On the SEH information.
Yeah, SEH hourly bill.
Yeah. But yes, I mean those professional services. That's what they charge, and we really need them to finish up these projects. I wish it was at a lower hourly rate, but we don't find that in the industry.
Questions or comments? Very good. Question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
This time I'll call for public comment. Is there anybody on for public comment?
If not, this is Mark at the vet's office.
Hi, Mark. Go ahead.
Just wanted to remind everyone that we are having coffee with the vets tomorrow at the local VFW here, 8 to 12. So, if you know any vets or if you are a vet, please come on down. And we're also welcoming, of course, family members, friends. That's where we get the lion's share of our referrals are from family and friends for veterans that we can assist. Also, as a note, March 29th is National Vietnam War Veterans Day, and I'm working right now with the VFW Auxiliary to see if we can put together maybe another coffee that morning. That's a Monday morning, but I will keep you posted on that one. And if we are able to pull something together, we'll definitely put an advertisement out and put it on the radio and in the paper. So with that, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mark. You said March 29th?
Yes, sir. March 29th, Monday, is the Vietnam War Veterans Day, and tomorrow is our first coffee with the vets.
Thank you, Mark.
You got it.
Any other public comment? I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Commissioner Ady? Second. Thank you, Commissioner Murray. All those in favor of adjourn?